Good evening, everybody. My name is Elliam Henderson, and we are with WS Enterprises. Thank you for allowing me to put together this presentation in order to describe the benefits and time and money savings that this on-demand air travel solution can save our company versus driving or going with an airline route. So, starting off here, we have an air transportation analysis, or basically a summary of the company's objectives as well as objectives for this presentation. So at WS Enterprises, based in Nashville, Tennessee, we're expanding our operations to various locations such as Afton, Oklahoma, across the country, and maybe one day even internationally. But in order to do that effectively, we need a team put together that's able to get us in and out of these locations in a cost-effective and timely manner. And by doing that, we need an on-demand air travel solution. Flying the airlines or driving just wouldn't make any sense. So going forward from there, we picked 4 aircraft that we will discuss in the pages to come. But our objectives today are going to be to discuss time and money savings that are possible with the expansion and with an on-demand air travel solution compared to the airlines, a market analysis of what we're looking at with various aircraft. And then below that, we are going to have a rating system of how we chose which aircraft and which aircraft stands out above the rest. Lastly, we are going to discuss the cost attributed and process of starting a flight department and the way it can service our company. By going with an on-demand air travel solution, we are saving the company valuable time. I mean, it's exponential when compared to traveling to local airports, waiting through TSA, waiting in the terminal for your plane to start boarding, and then having to deal with driving to the location anyway because we can't land close enough. Getting a small aircraft will allow us to get into smaller fields in a more timely manner, and we don't have to deal with the fees attributed to flying commercial, as well as having an extra privacy layer when we're flying by ourselves. In addition to that, it'll service the employees by improving their quality of life, by having them spend less overnights, save the company money from cutting down on payroll, cutting down paying for airline tickets, X, Y, and Z. And we can service those locations quicker when they need help with something or they need somebody to overlook something. We're able to get in and out very quick. So for the travel demand and the city area para analysis, the current travel demand placed on the organization is extremely difficult for us to keep up with as is. It also takes an employee's personal life is affected just by having to spend so many nights alone, and their happiness overall is important to the company. And if we can help improve their happiness by not having them wait through TSA and having them home more nights out of the year, that's something we want to do. So this year alone, we traveled 751 hours, spent $70,000 and 55 nights away from home. After the expansion, those numbers are going to go up to 876 hours per year and $84,000 spent on airline travel, as well as 63 nights away from home. Those numbers will continue to go up as we continue to grow as a company and expand to various different locations. So some key points. It's a huge time investment to fly commercial or even drive for that matter. Most people are within about an hour to 2 hours away from an international airport that's able to service those locations. From there, you're waiting through TSA for another hour, checking baggage, waiting in the terminal for your plane to depart, boarding, and then taxiing and takeoff, and you're finally on your way. As well as the actual flight takes time as well, and picking up your bags. TSA is a huge headache. I know people, you hate going through there and them telling you what you can't bring and whatnot. And just, it's a huge headache having to throw away your stuff, especially if it's important business documents or anything of that nature that you might need in your lap right now. It's also just a waste of money. Considering how much our company flies, it just doesn't make sense to keep paying the airlines when we could get an aircraft cheaper than paying the airlines every year. All right, so if we look here at this diagram, it is showing us the TBM 930 as a reference. And if we look at the combined non-duplicated travel miles after the expansion, we are only putting 400 hours on the aircraft. So we basically cut that time down in half. We're saving 475 hours essentially per year on travel. In addition to that, we are saving 51 nights away from home. We're only spending 12 nights away from home. All right, moving on. The market analysis summary or aircraft selection. So in order to select a good aircraft for the company, there's a few factors we need to consider. That's the initial cost of acquiring the aircraft, the variable cost, fixed cost, the range of the aircraft, usable load, capacity for seats, as well as if it's a turboprop or jet aircraft. So for our company, I went ahead and set as a bare minimum, we need at least 6 seats in our aircraft. So moving forward from there, I personally believe that the TBM or the Eclipse 550 would be the best suit for us at the moment, just because we have few employees that actually travel, and then these aircraft are plenty big for the few employees that do travel, as well as having a low overhead and a low initial purchase price. And they're both also extremely fast when it comes to flights within 1,000 nautical miles. It does the trick just fine. Between the two Eclipse jets, and the Eclipse jet and the TBM, they're both essentially an hour for a 300-mile round trip. All right. The differences between the aircraft. So the TBM is a single-engine turboprop with a true top airspeed of 330 knots. It has fewer seats than the rest of the aircraft, only 6 seats. Eclipse jet, twin jet engine aircraft, true airspeed of 369. You get those airspeeds up as you go to the turbofan rather than the turboprop. It also has fewer seats than the other aircraft. The King Air 350, we're getting into the bigger aircraft, is a twin engine turboprop, true airspeed of 312 knots, and has a large airframe, so you're able to fit more passengers. That aircraft, depending on the configuration, you can fit 12 people. And then the last aircraft would be the big boy out of the bunch. It is the Citation CJ4. It is a twin turbofan aircraft, top true airspeed of 442 knots, the fastest aircraft by far. And again, it can fit, depending on the configuration of the aircraft, it can fit roughly 12 people. Going forward from there, what are the real differences that matter to you? Legroom, space, usable load, and range and speed is the big one. Out of all of them, for just the flights that we're currently having to do, they'd all do the trick pretty well as far as speed goes. Nothing's really crazy far where a CJ4 would make a whole bunch of sense. As far as legroom goes, Eclipse jet's lacking on that. The King Air and then the TBM would have plenty of cabin space for you to move around and enjoy your time in the aircraft. Besides that, other key differences are twin versus single engine, and then turboprop versus turbofan. Between the turbofans and the turboprops, they both are jet aircraft engines. The turbofans obviously are going to be substantially faster. They have less drag, and they're able to power through the air. Between the single engines and the multi-engines, it's a higher operational cost, higher cost of acquisition usually, but they are generally safer because you have a backup engine in case anything goes wrong. And then the single engine TBM, I think personally, is a great choice. You have one engine, it's extremely reliable, Pratt & Whitney, low cost of maintenance, low cost of acquisition, and overall is able to fit pretty much everything we'd need to take, has the best range, usable load out of most of these aircraft. And then below is just kind of a diagram of different altitudes they can reach, as well as their times for various trip differences. Out of the altitudes, the highest is going to be the Citation, next with the Eclipse jet, and then the two lowest are going to be the turboprop aircraft. But generally what we're doing, we're not going to really need to be up there in the 40,000 flight level 40 we're able to work around weather. We're able to plan around that accordingly. We're not an airline that needs to go over the top of stuff. We can work our way around things. Selection matrix. Okay, aircraft selection. After we determined the 4 aircraft that we were going to consider, those being the ones mentioned above, we needed a ranking system to be able to help determine which one stands out among the rest. So we went ahead and conducted some interviews with these various categories and assigned them ranks between 1 and 4, 1 being a low importance and 4 being of high importance. And those categories are purchase price of 4, age of 1, value factor is a 2, cabin volume is a 3, so that one's more important. Wing loading is a 1, not really too worried about wing loading. Max fuel load or payload is 3, that's important to us. Max load range is important to us. And then the direct operational costs is important to us as well. And then the maintenance cost per hour is very important to us. So out of those 9 categories, when we compared them to the aircraft, the TBM 930 came out on top. It had had a purchase price of $4.2 million, essentially, which is on the higher end out of the other aircraft we listed, but that's because that's a new aircraft when compared to the King Air. When a King Air is new, you're going to be looking up closer to the $10 million range. And then from there, we could get a used TBM2 and bring that price down. From there, other things that stand out is the value factor, had a good value factor. For what we were getting out of it, good cabin volume, some of the best usable load, and some of the best range as well, and very low maintenance cost per hour and direct cost per hour. Up next is the operational costs between all the aircraft. So we have the purchase price and then the yearly fixed cost. So up front, before we're even considering buying an aircraft, these are going to be the price tags. $4.2 million for the TBM 930, 2.5 for the Eclipse 550, 3.5 for the King Air 350, and then the Citation CJ4 is $9.2 million. Again, this depends on the time we're buying, where we're buying, and new or used. Any of these aircraft, we could look for a new or a used model if we really wanted to, but out of all of them, the TBM, a new TBM would make sense. It's not a huge upfront cost. Other factors to consider are going to be fueling. Depending on where we go, fuel changes price pretty drastically actually right now. Maintenance and the expense for the crew, hangar fees, insurance cost for the aircraft is a big thing. Having a single engine aircraft is crucial. Twin engine or a aircraft that requires 2 pilots is going to be a huge burden on salaries paying for the pilots as well as insurance costs for that aircraft. Other factors to consider are going to be the appreciation or depreciation of the asset for tax write-off purposes. Aircrafts do tend to depreciate, but there has been certain instances with certain aircraft where they do appreciate in time, but it's marginal. And then other factors to consider are going to be how we hire a flight department or who we hire is are we going to have an on-hand maintenance staff that works exclusively on our aircraft? Are we going to outsource to another company? In my opinion, if we just have the one aircraft right now, there would be little sense paying a huge maintenance staff that's only going to work on the aircraft. Few and far between if we keep it in working order. And then below we have our chart here that's compared to chartering a jet from another company like NetJet or Wheels Up Aviation, GoJet, any of those companies. So we could also charter an aircraft rather than fly airlines, which is a reasonable option depending on the amount of flying you're doing. But for our company that's flying, well, right now almost 800 hours. But if we bought an aircraft, it would be closer to 400. And if we look at this bottom x-axis here, we can tell 400 hours and we go up and we can see the cost to utilization comparison. So in order for us to justify chartering an aircraft, we'd have to be flying less than roughly 100 hours. In order to justify buying something like the TBM, we'd need to be flying roughly 125 hours, which the company completely crushes. As far as operational structures, The CO is in charge of every operation process in the flight department. And then from there, it stems off to the maintenance team. That could be AMPs, AMPIAs, or anybody that's involved with directly taking care of the aircraft. And then from there, you have to have distinct jobs everybody's in charge of doing. So the COO is in charge of directing who does what and what's going on when. The AMPs and regular maintenance teams in charge of getting the job done and getting it done right. They're not to basically complain about the jobs. Their orders coming down the pipeline, and they just need to get it done. Having a good HR team is important too. That way they can deal with the daily tasks of running a company as well as budgeting. So in order to set up this department, our company needs to spend roughly $2 million a year on salaries and parts as well as rental space. So to be able to pay all those employees that are required to keep the aircraft going. Depending on where we get them and where we're keeping the aircraft, these prices differ. But generally, an AMPIA working on a jet aircraft is going to want $90,000 to $120,000 a year, depending on what aircraft they're working on and who they are and their experience. And that's just an AMPIA. I mean, there's other staff we have to hire too. Hangar space is a big thing. I mean, a big jet aircraft is going to cost a lot of money in hangar space. Something like a TBM, we might be able to squeeze into a smaller hangar for a cheaper price. It takes less of their floor up. And then other pros to keeping everything in-house and starting our own operation would be we know exactly who's working on our aircraft, when it's being worked on. Our employees are able to basically take responsibility for their actions. And if we get good quality employees from our HR team that's proud of our company, aligned with our company goals, they're more willing to work and provide quality work in a timely manner to help future our company's success, thus futuring their success, being involved with the company. The more money the company makes, the more money he's going to make generally. And then overall, in conclusion, acquiring a company aircraft is a no-brainer. We need to get something. And at this moment, for our current flight department needs, the TBM 930 fits all of those perfectly. We're not doing a substantial amount of long-distance flying international where we need something really quick. For right now, a nice single-engine TBM will do the job perfectly, allow us to get in the door for a low initial cost, and we can fly pretty much direct everywhere we need to go on one tank of gas. While carrying everything we need. So for a 1,000 nautical mile round trip, TBM is able to do it in 3 hours and 10 minutes. True airspeed of 316 going 1,000 miles. The cost is going to be $1,828, and it cruises at an altitude of 29,000 feet or something like that. And in addition to that, we're already saving roughly, I believe I said it was like 400 and something hours versus airlines. We're saving huge amounts of times versus when you consider the airports we can fly into, the time we're saving at TSA, the headache we're saving our employees by allowing them to basically pack what they need for that job or that trip away from home, drive directly to the closest airport that aircraft can land at or pick them up at, and the plane's ready for them on the tarmac. They simply just walk out and hop in. The pilots are ready to go from there. So overall, it increases the quality of life for our employees and a huge time savings. I mean, 400 hours a year is nutty. We're saving a whole bunch of money on salaries. So overall, thank you. TBM 930s should